Thank you, coaches. I'm delighted to be here, and I mean that sincerely. I totally enjoy doing what I'm doing, and I'm especially excited about my task here today, which is to lend an emotional charge to your clinic. Mike McKinley, who is the president of the National Speakers Association, says that we come together for educational and emotional support. And it's my job here today to talk about the importance of you being emotionally charged in your coaching and, in fact, in all areas of your life. I have a message for you today. And that message is very simply this. You make a difference. You make a difference in your school. You make a difference in your community. In fact, as a coach, you make a difference in the world. And maybe that concept is best summed up with this little poem. The task, to build a better world. But I said, how? The world is such a big place, so complicated now. And I so small and helpless, there's nothing I can do. But God in all his wisdom said, just build a better you. You know, that's exciting when I think about the fact that all I need to do to make the world a better place to live is to build a better me. And all you have to do to make the world a better place to live is to spend a little bit of time every day making you a better you. The world strives for love and joy and peace and productivity, all of those good things, one person at a time. So that really makes you important in the scheme of things. And it makes you especially important because of the fact that you're a coach. And you influence people at a tremendously, tremendously important time in their lives. Chaim Ginott, who wrote the book Between Teacher and Child, said this, I've come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. My personal approach makes the weather. My daily mood creates the climate. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. And in all situations, it's my response that dictates whether crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized. You know, that is a frightening conclusion when I realize that every day when I step on that practice floor at 3:30 with the 20, 25 kids that are entrusted to me, I'm the decisive element. That is frightening. But it's also very motivating to know that if I can walk on that floor with a positive attitude, if I'm well organized, if I do the best job that I can possibly do, I can be a tremendously positive influence in their lives. And so it is with you. You really do make a difference. So we're going to spend some time today just for you. And you're going to find as we go through the presentation that we're not talking a lot about winning and losing. We're maybe not talking a whole lot even about the kids. We're talking a lot about you because you really do make a difference. And we're going to spend some time talking about developing positive attitudes because I really believe this to be true. Positive attitudes get positive results, and negative attitudes get negative results. And I could illustrate that very simply with this example. I could easily put a list of 10 positive characteristics about my wife on the board, and that list probably would be true. And on the other side, I could put a list of 10 negative characteristics, and that list probably also would be true. But let me ask you a question whose answer is very obvious. If I want to build a happy, healthy, wholesome, successful marriage, on which of these two lists should I concentrate my mental energies? And it's obviously the positive. And let me tell you, this thing works. Pat and I have been happily married for 26 years. We figure 26 out of 32 isn't too bad at all, you see. Positive attitudes really do get positive results. So I want to start today by sharing with you a list of 5 attitudes that I think can help you be successful in coaching. But beyond that, you can apply these attitudes to any walk of life that you want, in your family relationships, in your personal relationships, in the classroom. When I started out in this business 17 years ago, I was looking for a way to put a little banquet speech together. And I started to listen to tapes and attend a lot of seminars, read a lot of books written by some of the best motivators in the country. And I wanted to find out what are the common threads running through all of these presentations about motivation and attitude and success. And I came up with this list of 5 attitudes. And even though the support stories have changed, the jokes have changed, the material has changed a little bit, that list has remained constant for over 17 years. Attitude number 1 is an attitude of gratitude. Zig Ziglar, on the front cover of his book, Confessions of a Happy Christian, says that the more you thank God for what you have, the more you'll have to thank God for. And I'm not trying to be a preacher here now by any stretch of the imagination, but rather to say this. You can apply that to any walk of life that you want. It seems the more I thank my wife for the good things that she does for me, the more good things she does to have me thank her for. And the more as parents that we step back and look at the good things that our kids are doing and express appreciation for those good things, the more good things they do to have us thank them for. The more you let your athletes know how much you appreciate their efforts and their dedication and their desire, the more effort and dedication and desire you're going to get from them to be appreciative of. To me, I think gratitude is one of the ultimate. Because if you really choose to be a grateful person, and I think that is a choice, then it forces you every day to step back and count your blessings, to look at what's good in your life. You know, we're surrounded by a lot of negative stuff, and sometimes it's easy to concentrate on the negatives. But if you want to be a grateful person, then you need to step back every day and reflect on the good. I reflect on this often. Why was I so lucky to be born in America? I could have been born in a country where they don't have the freedoms that we have. I could have been born in Ethiopia, where parents watch their kids starve right in front of them and they can't do a thing about it. But I was born in America. Pretty lucky. And to top it off, I grew up in Morton, Minnesota. Is there anybody here who has not yet been to Morton, Minnesota? Nice to have something to look forward to if you've never been there. A great little town, about 700 people when I was growing up there. We didn't have any of the amenities of a bigger city. You know, we didn't have a movie theater. I didn't have a bowling alley. The center of the school, the center of the town was the school. Didn't have a full-time fire department, obviously. You know, just had a group of volunteers. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not putting them down. They were good. They were well trained. We had a little nightclub burning down outside of town one night, and our department went out to fight it. Now, normally it would have burned down by 10 o'clock at night. These guys kept it going till 4:30 in the morning. About 10 years ago or so, though, we had a centennial celebration in Morton. And for me and for a lot of the people that came back to that celebration, that was a celebration of Dean Tate. Dean Tate was my high school basketball coach, and when I look back at all of the teachers that I had in my educational experience, all of the coaches that I had, and I had some great ones, one person stands out, and that was Dean Tate. He was the one that instilled enthusiasm and desire and a real love of athletics, a real love of school, a real love of education. And he didn't always do that through the classroom. He was my shop teacher, so the last time I had him in class was in 8th grade. And it wasn't just the guys that he had in his shop class. It wasn't just the athletes. He lent enthusiasm to the people that were playing in a band. He gave them encouragement. He supported the kids that were in the play. He was always there for us. He dedicated 32 years of his life to that school and to those kids in that small town. And I have a message for you today. You can be somebody's Dean Tate. You can be the one that 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, somebody's going to look back and say, you know, that coach really made a difference in my life. In fact, if you've been in coaching for a while, I'm guessing you probably already are somebody's Dean Tate. What a wonderful thought. And you know, something else that I found out in growing up in Morton is the fact that life is all people. See, we didn't have things to do. Like I said, we didn't have a movie theater, we didn't have a bowling alley. So our life was people. And that leads us to attitude number 2, which is a people-building attitude. I've heard it said by a lot of speakers in a lot of different ways. To the extent you help others get what they want in their life, do you receive what you want? Absolutely imperative in coaching. You achieve your success in coaching by helping your athletes achieve their success. There's no other way to do it. You cannot achieve success by beating your athletes down, by making them feel less than worthy, by making them feel unconfident. If you want to be successful as a coach, then you've got to spend some of your time building the confidence and building the self-esteem, building the self-worth of your athletes. And in addition to that, making sure that you're doing a good job of teaching the techniques as well. You know, I think one of the real keys to people building is to recognize the dignity of every human being that you come in contact with. We do that when we see a baby. We hold that little human being in our hands and we absolutely marvel. We say there's an absolute living, breathing miracle with eyes that see and a heart that beats and hopes and fears and joys and dreams. And we do everything we can to make that little human being feel loved and warm and important. And sometimes we forget as that little human being grows through its stages in life, it's still a miracle. You know that 8th grader in your neighborhood with spiked hair that's green? It's still a miracle. Or the one you're behind at the grocery store and he or she is elderly and confused and having a hard time as they're counting their change. And sometimes we have a tendency to stand in back of the line and think, come on, hurry up there. I've got places to go and people to see, and if you don't know what you're doing, just get out of the way and let me go through. Stop. Stop and recognize that within that outer form is still an absolute living, breathing miracle. Still with eyes that see and still with a heart that beats and still with hopes and fears and joys and dreams. And they're still waiting for you to come along to make them feel loved and warm and important. And you need to remember that about every one of your athletes. Not just the stars, not just the ones that help you win, but that person that's out there every single day trying as hard as he or she can. Maybe they're not tremendously gifted athletically, but you need to recognize and realize that their self-worth is not just totally tied to their athletic ability. Every one of those kids is an absolute living, breathing miracle. And they're still waiting for you to come along to make them feel important. And it's amazing what a little pat on the back, or what a little hello in the morning, what a little, gee, great effort out there today, thanks a lot, will do to build the confidence and self-worth of those athletes of yours. And that's going to carry on far beyond their athletic competition. That's something that's going to carry on in everything that they do as they go through this game of life. So become a people builder. Build a confidence, build a self-esteem of as many of those people as you possibly can. And I guarantee that's going to come back to you, because to the extent that you help them get that in their life, do you receive that then in your life. Attitude number 3 is an important one, and if you're taking notes, I think you should put a little asterisk or a little star by this one, because sometimes it's easy to go hear these positive thinking speakers, and we figure, oh, all I have to do is turn this little crank in my think machine and be positive, and then I win them all, and all of my problems go away, right? Well, that's not the case. You're going to face problems every single day of your life. There are going to be times when things don't go well. There are going to be times when the pressure is on. And it's during those times that you really have to develop a solution-conscious attitude and recognize that it's not your problems that give you the headache, but your attitude towards your problems that give you the headache. Or as a speaker friend of mine by the name of Michael Patrick says, the problem is not the issue. The issue is how you deal with the problem. And when you get to hear Michael Patrick speak, and if you ever get a chance to hear Mike Patrick speak, I highly recommend that you do that. You'll know that he's coming from the heart. He tells his story. He talks about growing up in Worthington in the southwestern corner of Minnesota. And he said, I had the world by the tail. I was an athlete, a football player, basketball player, being recruited by college coaches. I was a good student, National Honor Society, relatively good looking. I got a date every once in a while. But the first football game of his junior year, he went in to make a tackle, and the knee pad from the running back hooked onto his face mask, jerked his neck, and he was paralyzed from the chest down. He has some use of his hands and arms. He's in a wheelchair. And when Michael Patrick says, folks, the problem's not the issue. The issue is how you deal with the problem. Now, I can't imagine the amount of mental toughness that it must have taken for him to overcome that adversity. He said, I had the world by the tail. You know, I was an athlete, and the crowd was cheering, and the band was playing, and the college coaches were there to recruit me. And then the next day, in fact, for the next 99 days, I was in the Sioux Falls Hospital, literally a sandwich between two boards, being flipped upside down every 30 minutes so I wouldn't develop bed sores. Again, I can't imagine the amount of mental toughness that it took to overcome that. But he did. He had a lot of support, a lot of love from his family, a lot of people cheering for him. But he also had a very positive attitude. You see, he didn't listen to the negativity. They said he wouldn't be able to walk again. They said he'd never be able to drive a car. They said he wouldn't be able to live independently. They said he wouldn't be able to have a job. Well, he's done almost all of those things. He's very successful in his speaking career. And when I talk about success, I'm talking about going far beyond the dollars and cents. Because when you get to know Michael, you find out that there's a person, in spite of the problems, in spite of the adversity, in spite of the challenges that he faces every day, he's really content and at peace with himself. He drives his van all over the country giving speeches. They said he wouldn't drive again. He owns his own home in Minneapolis. And if there is a person in that situation who will walk again, it'll be Mike Patrick. He talks about a spinal injury and describes it as this. It's like you and I having a telephone conversation and somebody cuts the cord. Well, we could still keep talking, but the message wouldn't get through. Well, so it is with a spinal injury. The message doesn't get through from the muscle or from the brain to the muscle because the cord is cut. But they're working on a computer chip, and they're thinking that someday they may be able to repair that so the message can get through. And if that ever happens, Mike Patrick will be prepared for that. He goes to therapy 2 to 3 days a week, and they put electrodes in his leg muscles, and he rides an exercise bike to strengthen his leg muscles. So when the day comes that that chip is ready, he will already have prepared himself to be ready to accept that new challenge. And haven't we heard so many times by coaches that the desire to prepare to win is just as important as the desire to win? Mike Patrick's desire to be a contributing human being is the same desire that it takes to win in athletics. It's the same desire that it takes to be successful in business. It's the same desire that it takes to be successful in any walk of life. And those are the kinds of things that as a coach you can really instill in your athletes if you choose to be a positive person. Attitude number 4 is an attitude of positive expectancy. And that contains a couple of parts. First of all is the fact that you deserve to feel good about you. Now, we have not been taught that, especially people my age. When we got old enough to walk and talk, they said, sit down, shut up. You know, we weren't supposed to feel good about ourselves. And we came home in 3rd grade and we were feeling so good because we'd gotten that good grade on our report card and we were popping our buttons a little bit. And they said, well, you don't want to be too proud now. You know, tone that down a little bit. So we learned how to put ourselves down and to put all of this negative self-talk into us. And to this day, somebody comes up and says, gee, that's a nice looking outfit. We say, well, it's been in the closet for 3 years. We have a hard time accepting good about ourselves. But I'm here to say it is okay for you to do that. Now, I'm not talking about arrogance here. And I think as coaches, we've got to be careful of the business of arrogance. We tried arrogance in the 60s. We looked at our self-esteem and we said, boy, it's really in the basement, so we had to do something about it. And we got into this, me, I am the greatest, you should all bow down to me because I did this and I did that and I'm so wonderful and I'm so much better than anybody else. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is what Dr. Wayne Dyer refers to as having a quiet love affair with yourself. To look in the mirror and really accept and like that person that you see. And it's easy to do when you're winning. It's easy to do when things are going well. But when you're going through that tough season, or even within the season, when you're going through that tough period of time during that season, you really have to work hard at keeping your faith and keeping your confidence in yourself. And it's a matter of developing a positive expectancy. I heard a speaker a few years ago by the name of Larry Moles, a funny guy. He's from Pinch, Ohio, and basically a joke teller, but he did have a message. And the message was that it's okay for you to believe in you. And he said, I finally got to the point in my life, Larry was about 55-ish, said, I finally got to the point in my life where I could look in the mirror and give myself a little pep talk and really believe it. He said, I'd look in the mirror and say, hey, Larry, you're okay. You're all right. You know, you go out, you make people laugh, you work hard, you do a good job. You make some mistakes, but everybody does. But boy, you're okay. And just for today, I'm going to believe in you. And Larry said it got to be such a great feeling, he bought himself a little pocket mirror and walks down the street saying, "Hey, Larry, you're okay." Remember the point of his message. It's okay for you to feel good about you. Now, the second part of positive expectancy is the fact that you get out of life what you expect. If you're expecting some joy, if you're expecting some love, if you're expecting some fun, if you're expecting to be successful, then that's what's going to come your way. Now, they did a study back in the 60s in California, a study called the Rosenthal study. A guy by the name of Rosenthal did the study. That's why they called it the Rosenthal study. They went into schools and tested selected students. And then they talked to the teachers about the students and would ask, well, how's the student doing? And invariably the teacher would say, well, you know, just so-so, C student, B- once in a while, but just an average student. And the person administering the test would say, boy, that's really surprising because they tested very highly. I think you've got an academic giant waiting to happen here. Then they came back at the end of the year and retested the students. And this time they didn't have to lie about the test scores. You see, in the fall, the test scores were very, very average. But they told the teachers that the test scores were high. The teachers elevated their expectancy of the students' performance, and the kids did indeed reach that level of performance. Well, I think the same can be true in athletics. If you set your standards high, if you expect your kids to work, if you expect your kids to develop their skills, if you expect them to be dedicated, then I think you're going to get that kind of performance. And keep it in perspective. It doesn't mean that you're going to win them all. But I think if you have a real positive expectancy, and if you can instill in them a desire to perform well, an expectancy to perform well, I think that, for the most part, is what you're going to get. You know, maybe the idea of positive expectancy is best summed up with this old story. Old joke, maybe you heard it before. It's a story about an old farm for sale out there in western Stearns County. Old, dilapidated, rundown place. Nobody wanted to buy it because they all saw the farm as it was, just a ramshackle old place. But there was one couple with a positive expectancy. They didn't see the farm as it was. They saw the farm as it could be. Bobby Kennedy summed that up nicely when he said, some people see the world as it is, and they say, why? Others see the world as it could be, and they say, why not? Well, that's the kind of attitude this couple had. So they went ahead, they bought the farm, and for the next 3 years absolutely worked their fingers to the bone, and did indeed have one of the most beautiful farm sites in the county. And then, of course, the minister came to pay him a visit. And he said, you know, the Lord has blessed you with a wonderful farm. And the couple looked back at the minister and they said, well, you're right, Reverend, but you know, we did pool our resources on this place. You should have seen it 3 years ago when he was farming it all by himself. And I like that little story because of the message, because I think it sums up the two ingredients necessary for success in anything that you do. First of all, you've got to have the vision. You've got to have the goal. You have to know what you want. And then you have to be willing to take the action to get it done. Which leads us to attitude number 5, which is an attitude of action. Because nothing happens until you decide to do it. And of all of the elements of success, I think that's the real key. That's what separates motivation from super height. And let me illustrate that. Back in about 1988, St. Cloud Cathedral won their third championship, their third state baseball championship in 11 years. And during the district and region tournaments, it was one cardiac game after another, just really, really exciting. But in the semifinals of the region, which was the next step into the state tournament, they were in the 8th inning, bottom of the 8th, so they were in extra innings. In Minnesota, high school baseball games are 7 innings. So they're in the bottom of the 8th inning, down by 1 run, tying run on second base. And little Derek Holman was up at the plate. Now, Derek Holman was about 5 feet 7 inches tall and about 128 pounds dripping wet. And a little left-handed batter, and he dug in against this big pitcher. Count was 1 ball and 2 strikes. And he fouled off 5 straight pitches before he finally got the hit that drove in the tying run. Cathedral went on to win the game. And after the game, all of the reporters were around Derek, and everybody was excited. And they were talking about all of these super hype things, you know, like Cathedral was a team of destiny and all of that, which is all well and good. But as you analyze that, you might say, boy, that is motivation. Oh, that's not motivation. That's the result of motivation. You see, true motivation is the fact that every morning before school started, Derek Holman got up, went to the batting cage, and hit 50 pitches. And I'm sure there were some mornings when the alarm went off and he really maybe didn't feel too much like getting out of bed, but he did it anyway. He took the action to get it done. That's motivation. And you might challenge yourself to ask you, are you doing those little things to keep yourself growing as a coach? Are you making sure that you're keeping yourself positive? Are you making sure that you're keeping up with your sport from a technical standpoint? Are you getting better at teaching the fundamentals? Are you getting better at understanding the strategy of your sport? Are you motivated to do those little things that make you successful in any walk of life? And I might challenge you to this, to carry this over into your personal life as well. Because I think the key to success is not so much doing the big things, but in doing the little things well, day after day after day. And the same is true in your relationships. In fact, I challenge you to this, those of you that are involved in a marriage or a long-term relationship. Are you still doing those little tiny things every day to keep that relationship alive? Charles Jarvis says keeping a relationship alive is nothing more than falling in love just a little bit every single day. And remember how it was back in the dating days? I can identify more with the men here than the women, but I think it's a two-way street. Remember, guys, how it was? We'd get off of work and we'd splash on that shaving lotion and we'd knock on her door. And as we met her parents, we were using our best manners, see, because we were really selling. We were courting. And when we went out on a date, we were not going to let her negotiate those stairs all by herself, so we took her by the hand and helped her down the stairs. We got out to the car. And she wasn't going to lift that big old heavy car door all by herself, not with this knight in shining armor around. So we opened up the car door and we got her seated and we drove off on our date because we were courting. We were really selling ourselves. And then one day we got married. And I would think, you know, we've been together 26 years. She's 46 years old. She can get up and down those stairs by herself. And they don't make cars as heavy as they used to. You know, she can lift that heavy car door by herself now because I've got things on my mind. I've got places to go. I got people to see. If that sounds like you, I challenge you to this. Take home one long stem rose. Anybody can call the florist and mail a dozen, but take that rose home in your hand and hand it to her and give her a kiss and say something like, you know, sometimes I get so wrapped up in what I'm doing that I don't pay enough attention to you, but I want you to know this. You're still the apple of my eye, and I love you more and more every day. And she'll take that rose and she'll clutch it to her heart, and a little tear comes down her cheek, and she's thinking, gee, this has been such a lousy day. Now he comes home drunk on top of it. And as you remember the story, remember the message behind the story, that it's the little things that make a difference. I was watching a special on Johnny Wooden, the former UCLA basketball coach, and the analyst who had played against him back in the UCLA prime day says the reason that UCLA was so predictable and yet so unbeatable is because they did the little things well. When all the words were said and done and all had been debated, the bottom line is attitude, the motivator stated. But the quiet man across the hall said, sir, I disagree. The bottom line isn't attitude, that's the top line, don't you see? For it's attitude that brings us to our good or bad attractions. But the bottom line has always been, and always will be, actions. When I ask my seminar participants the question, how important are attitudes? Invariably, I get back short one-word answers. Very. Critical. Attitudes are everything. I think most of us subscribe to the fact that attitudes are an important part of our existence. In fact, the Carnegie Institute did a study on success back in the 60s that lasted 5 years at a cost of $1 million. And they determined some interesting things about success. They determined that 15% of your success is due to your technical knowledge. 85% of your success hinges on your attitudes and your ability to deal with people. Now, that does not for 1 minute discount the importance of the 15%, because I think to be successful in coaching, you need to be technically competent. You need to learn more about your sport every year. I have 2 challenges in coaching. Number 1 is, can I become more technically sound as a basketball coach? Can I become better at teaching the fundamentals? Can I become better as a strategist? But the other side of that is, can I become better in my attitude and in my ability to deal with my athletes and to create a positive working climate for them? So let's take a look at how the attitude mechanism works. The way you think determines your attitudes. Attitudes are nothing more than habits of thought. You see some people that are in a habit of thinking negatively. They light up the whole room when they leave, if you know what I'm talking about. And then you see those that think positively, the optimists of the world. They go after Moby Dick in a rowboat, and they take tartar sauce along. They expect everything they do is supposed to come to a successful conclusion. Well, your attitudes then determine your behavior, and your behavior determines the results that you get out of life. Let me illustrate that with this example. I do a lot of driving in my business. I live in St. Cloud, Minnesota, do quite a bit of work in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, which is legally about an hour and a half from St. Cloud. And let's say driving back from Minneapolis to St. Cloud, I get caught up on a negative thought pattern about my wife, Pat, and our relationship. And I'm driving along thinking, gee, that tiff we had last week, I'll tell you, if she ever brings it up again, I want to tell her in no uncertain terms what I think of that. Good gravy, I'm out of here beating the streets. And she says something like that, and oh, she'd have done something different 3 years ago. Our life sure would be different now. Well, if I would think like that for an hour and a half, by the time I would get home, my attitudes would be pretty lousy. My behavior would be cordial at best, and the results probably wouldn't be very good. What if, on the other hand, I chose to think positive thoughts? What if I chose to think about the love that we've shared now for 26 years? Or the joy that we've had in raising our family? We've got 3 boys, 25, 22, and 19, so 3 kids through the teen years. And we loved raising teenagers, by the way. Some people say we should be investigated, but we had a ball during the teen years. Or what if I think about how during the tough times she was right there, she was so supportive. Well, if I would think like that for an hour and a half, by the time I would get home, my attitudes would be a whole lot different, my behavior would be a whole lot different, and the results would probably be a whole lot different. And let me ask you this, what changed? See, the only thing that changed in those 2 scenarios is what I chose to think about. But what a dramatic difference in results. And we saw that working over an hour and a half period of time. Multiply that by 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you can see that relationships are built based on what you choose to think about. Careers are built based on what you choose to think about. Athletic programs are built based on what people choose to think about. The goals that they choose to set, the dedication that they choose to give to their sport, to their profession, to that athletic program. So I would like to sell you on an idea. If somebody would come up to me and say, look, I don't really believe in this motivation stuff, I don't believe in this positive thinking stuff, but I tell you what, I'll buy one idea and try it for 30 days and you can choose it. What would you suggest? Here's what I would say. Would you please set aside just 5 to 10 to 15 minutes every single day to do something to put positive thoughts into your mind? If you enjoy reading, I highly suggest that you read the book See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. You can read 2, 3, 4 pages, and in those 2 or 3 or 4 pages, you're going to get a touch of inspiration and you'll get a chuckle. I read a book in 1984 entitled Love is Letting Go of Fear by Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, and it really began to change the way I think about my relationships with people, not only my athletes, but my kids at home, and everybody I dealt with differently. Because the thoughts that Jampolsky had in the book began to change my attitudes about my relationships with people and so on. And as the attitudes changed, the behavior changed. And as the behavior changed, I'm getting a whole different set of results, not only in relationships, but the way I feel about everything that I do. Another great way to train your attitude is through cassette tape learning. I'm absolutely convinced that one of the greatest tools that we have available for change in behavior is cassette tape learning. You can plug in a cassette tape and you can listen to that tape 5, 10, 15, 20 times and still pick up new information. And the beauty of the cassette tape learning process is the fact that you can listen to the tape while your hands are busy but your mind is idle as you're getting ready for work. You know, as you're shaving or fixing your hair or whatever, or even as you're driving. Great way to spend driving time. Plug in a tape by Zig Ziglar or Earl Nightingale or Dr. Dennis Waitley, Anthony Robbins. The list is absolutely endless. And as you listen to the cassettes, those ideas go from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind and soon become a part of your behavior. I might suggest that you look through the catalog of championship books and video productions. There's a wealth of information available to coaches, not only on the technical part of your coaching, but on the attitude part as well. In fact, we've expanded this, this presentation and have created a set of audio tapes entitled Coaches Make the Difference. And in that, we go beyond the attitude. We talk about building the self-esteem of your student athletes. We talk about dealing positively with parents, keeping yourself motivated. And again, as you listen to the cassette tapes over and over and over and over again, those ideas are in the forefront of your mind as you go onto your practice floor or into the pool or rink or wherever you do your coaching. Anthony Robbins, the author of Unlimited Power, talks about keeping yourself in a resourceful state. And I don't know if any of us can define a resourceful state, but I think we all know what it is. It's those days when you are really feeling good. I mean, you're really fired up and you're really clicking. Well, Anthony Robbins says that success leaves clues. And you find people that are successful in any walk of life, and one of the abilities they have is to put themselves into a resourceful state. And certainly we need to do that in coaching. I can give you an example of this past season, first year back into head coaching, and I knew that it was not going to be a banner year. But I didn't think that things were going to go quite that tough from a winning and losing standpoint. We were making some progress. You know, we were getting beat early in the season by 20, 30, 40 points and playing those same teams the second time around to, you know, 2, 3, 4 points. So we were in every ball game, but we still had a hard time losing. In fact, I used to tell people, they'd say, how things going? I said, well, we're 9-8. Lost 9 at home, 8 more in a row. You know, it was one of those kinds of years. But one of the games after Christmas, I felt that we hadn't played hard. In all of the other games, we came to play hard, we played pretty well, we just couldn't win. But this night, I really felt we hadn't played hard. And the next day, I was going to give them a little wake-up call at practice. And I went on the floor by design to be a little cranky. Well, that's all well and good once in a while, you know, to give that wake-up call. But the problem is, I stayed in that state the next day. And if I'm in a non-resourceful state, I cannot be effective at motivating my athletes to do well. And the next day we had a game, and I knew I had to get back into what Anthony Robbins calls this resourceful state. I had to get feeling and thinking positively again. So I set aside some time that day to do just that. I happened to flip in a tape by Anthony Robbins. It was handy, and he had some really, really good suggestions. I shut off the tape and did some writing for a while. Still wasn't there, so I went up to school and I talked to the former head coach. We went into a little X&O session, and he just kind of gave me a little pep talk. And by game time that night, I was again in a resourceful state, and I was able to coach up to the best of my abilities. So the whole point is this. There are things that you can do to help keep yourself positive. And I think that's a tremendously, tremendously important part of coaching. And it goes beyond winning and losing. Certainly being positive is a big part of winning and losing. But winning and losing is only a small part of what you do as a coach, because you really do affect the lives of your student athletes. They're going to come back 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and they're going to remember the wins, they're going to remember the thrills, they're going to remember some of the ups and downs, you know, but beyond that, they're going to remember that experience. And if you as a coach have made that a positive experience for them, that's going to carry over into so many walks of their life. My wife Pat and I were having a conversation on our deck a couple of summers ago, and I was talking about wanting to get back into coaching. She said, "Why do you want to do that? You've worked hard at your business, you've got yourself to the point where you're successful. Why do you want to go back into coaching?" I said, "Well, the major reason is this. When a coach retires, he or she leaves something behind. Nothing gives me a greater thrill than for somebody to come up and say those two magical words, 'Hi, Coach.' One thing about missing coaching, it wasn't the band playing and a crowd cheering and naming a paper. Oh, that's all fun, it's all important. But the thing that I missed most was the lasting relationships with the athletes. You are in a profession that allows you a tremendous opportunity to be a positive influence on the lives of the people that you coach. The attitude, the dedication, the enthusiasm, the loyalty that you instill in your kids today is going to perpetuate itself in the next generation. You will always leave something of you behind. So I leave you today with this thought. It's called A Sportsman's Prayer, written by Burton Braley. As I go through the battle of life, I ask but a field that is fair, a chance that is equal to all in the strife, the courage to strive and to dare. If I should win, let it be by the code, with my faith and my honor held high. And if I should lose, let me stand by the road and cheer as the winners go by. You're a coach, and you really do make a difference.